There is nothing more pleasing than the sound of your own name. Imagine you're in a very crowded place like a stadium. There's tons of people, there's hustle, there's bustle, there's so many sounds and much yelling. But then someone says your name, and it cuts through all of the noise, and you hear it immediately and clearly. This is because each of us has an innate need to be seen, to be known, to be understood, to be loved, and to belong. Long before COVID, loneliness was being reported at an alarming rate across the country and across generations. Now, loneliness isn't limited to simply being alone, because it's caused by a lack of deep connection. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. Or you can feel like you're with so many people and no one gets you. Maybe you feel misunderstood. You have that perception that no one cares. That's why crowds can sometimes be some of the most loneliest places. Right now, we are in the third week of our message series, You Are Not Alone. In the days immediately following the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus, the disciples didn't get it all at once. They were confused, they were scattered, they were isolated. Their coming to belief in the resurrection of Jesus didn't happen overnight. And so it is for us. Our recovery from the pandemic and our re-entry into the next normal are not happening overnight either. These things are taking time. But like the disciples, they grew into this truth, and we are growing into this truth too. The truth that as a consequence of the resurrection of Jesus, we are not alone. Because before he ascended into heaven, Jesus said, "Behold, I am with you always." In the verse immediately preceding the gospel that we just heard, Jesus says, "I have come that they might have life and have it more abundantly." When we say that the path to a better life is through Jesus Christ, this is what we're talking about. The abundant life that Jesus promises. Abundant life isn't about the acquisition of possessions, because nothing you can buy can fill that hole in your heart, which was made for God and was made for love. An abundant or a better life doesn't come from the luxuries you enjoy, nor is it a sort of self-help program to try to feel more happy. The abundant, the better life is about connection. It's about meaning. It's about purpose, fulfillment, and that love that leads to more love. The abundance we're talking about is a foretaste of the happiness that will be yours forever in heaven. It includes this deep sense of belonging, and it doesn't go away when things are tough. That's because when you talk to someone who's maybe suffered an extreme loss or a very terrible situation, you might say to them, "What got you through?" And they can answer with firmness, "My faith." That's why the opening words that we heard in today's gospel that Jesus spoke are so comforting. Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me." When Jesus says he knows the sheep, he's talking about more than mere recognition. Because as the good shepherd, he's not like a teacher who simply takes attendance at the beginning of the class by calling off the names. The good shepherd feels our presence and knows if we are near or far. The knowledge that the good shepherd has of us is both deep and intimate, like that of a mother for her child, who feels exactly what the child is feeling. Or to take from that famous poem by Pedro Arrupe, which is called Fall in Love. The Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd knows what seizes your imagination, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, whom you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with gratitude and joy. The Good Shepherd knows us inside and out. And the Good Shepherd understands what we need. The Good Shepherd loves us enough to tell us what we need to hear, even when we don't want to hear it. When we think of sheep, you might think of them as being meek creatures who mindlessly follow the shepherd, but they're much more complex than that. They experience a range of emotions, from sadness to playfulness, and from fear to joy. They have impressive recognition skills, and they develop deep and loyal relationships. And the herding instinct that sheep have means that they do not like to be alone. Because a sheep that's alone feels stress and anxiety. And the Good Shepherd knows that if a sheep is alone, well, then that means that something has gone wrong for it. There's a funny video going around online right now. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's about a sheep. It's about 20 seconds long. There's a sheep that gets stuck in a ditch, and there's a young shepherd boy trying to pull it out of the ditch. It's a long ditch. Maybe it runs along as long as the aisle here. And the boy has somehow he hoists the sheep out of the ditch, and immediately the sheep takes off running, and it jumps back in the ditch and gets stuck. That's us. The Good Shepherd goes through the inconvenience of getting us up, even though he knows we're going to fall in that ditch again. Actually, the picture, the little video's on our Facebook page if you want to see it. When a sheep is separated, it could have happened for many reasons. Maybe the sheep was sick or injured. Maybe it was too weak to keep up with the flock. Maybe it fell in a ditch and got stuck, or maybe something else. But the Good Shepherd isn't willing to leave that sheep in its pain. And neither is Jesus willing to leave us in our pain, especially when we feel alone. Because that's when the wolves come. Wolves come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they represent the threats to our better, abundant life. There's the wolf of self-absorption. There's the wolf of always being right and in control. The wolf of selfishly looking to your comfort and pleasure over that of others. And there's the wolves of despair, discouragement, brokenness, and failure, and more. There are so many wolves, and they come from so many sources. But Jesus, our Good Shepherd, he wants us to lead us and protect us from all of them. And more than that, Jesus sacrifices himself, and as he said in the gospel, he lays down his life for the sheep. And he said if he has power to lay it down, he has power to take up his life again. Resurrection time. And that's how we all want to be loved. Not a little like the hired hand who loves us when it's easy, but then he sees the wolves coming and then runs away. No, we want to be loved with everything. Even when it costs everything. Because that's the difference between the Good Shepherd and the hired hand. The hired hand punches the clock and checks out. The hired hand is in it for himself and for his paycheck. They'll give you a little bit, but then they stop. The hired hand is more concerned about their own wages and what's good for them than about what is good for you. You see, the Good Shepherd doesn't live for himself. The Good Shepherd lives for you. But often hired hands do disguise themselves as shepherds. I'm sure that each of you has had a hired hand in your life who you thought was a shepherd, but then they abandon you when you most desperately needed them. And there's also maybe the more painful side. Maybe there's that time when you proved to be a hired hand to someone else. They relied on you, or me, and we let them down. We're too focused on ourselves or what was good for us or whatever. It's not an option for us simply to be hired hands because others are entrusted to us. This is very clear in the case of our families, but it's so much more than that. The welfare of others depends on you. And this might seem bold, but it's true. God is counting on you to be a good shepherd. To be a good shepherd to a parent, a spouse, a child, a grandchild, a classmate, a coworker, a friend, maybe to someone you don't know, or maybe even to someone you can't stand. And the way you are a good shepherd is by practicing the qualities of the good shepherd, such as self-sacrifice, patience, compassion, a desire for deeper understanding. In a word, you look to the needs of the others before you look to the needs of yourself. You don't ask the question, what do I get? You ask the question, how can I help? What can I give? So as you look back at your life, who's the person who's been a good shepherd for you? A person who really wanted what was best for you. A person who helped you when you were lost, or a person who protected you when those wolves were lurking. A person who makes you a better version of yourself. Now, we're sheep, of course, so God has, in his goodness to us, has placed many shepherds in our life. But it doesn't end there, because God has called us to be shepherds to others. Because here's the thing about loneliness. It only takes one person to reach out and say, you are not alone. The good shepherd, regardless of who it is, calls you by name, leads you to a better life, and assures you that you are not alone.